Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are episode 5 now of the Avid Investor Podcast with me, your host, Josh Adamek. And today we're going to talk about the difference between assets and liabilities. I wanted to dive into this topic because there's a lot of misconceptions on or unknowns of the difference between the basics of assets and liabilities. And knowing the difference is a huge part in your financial management, whether that's on a business level, personal level, both. You need to understand and know the difference between assets and liabilities. So in basic terms, an asset is something that makes you money, and a liability is something that costs you money. So common misconception, common misunderstanding, for example, is a lot of people think that their own personal home is an asset, when in reality, your own personal home is not an asset. It's a liability. Even if your home is free and clear, meaning have no mortgage, you owe no money on it, it still costs you money every month, every year. You have to maintain it. You have to pay the taxes. You have to pay the insurance. So your own personal home costs you money, even though on a personal financial statement, I get it, it's going to be listed in the asset class, but in reality, it's a liability because it costs you money. Even if you have a ton of equity, you own it free and clear, it's worth a ton of money, you don't realize that equity or that value until you sell that home. And many people never sell their personal home. So keep in mind that is a liability. Another liability, is your car, your personal car. You might own it free and clear. You might not have a car payment. Many people do not have car payments. But that car, you have to insure it. You have to maintain it. It costs you money. So it's a liability. It can be a greater liability if you owe a ton of money on it. Same with your home. If you're over leveraged on your home, you have a big mortgage against it versus the value, that's a bigger liability. You can reduce those liabilities by paying them down, paying them off, but it's still a liability. On the other hand, an asset is something that makes you money. For example, investment properties, real estate. And you're going to say, well, that still costs money. Yes, but the goal with investments, with cash flowing investments, is to have cash flow that's greater than your cost, so it becomes an asset. Another example is, you may have you may have investment accounts. Those are assets, something that creates value. Things that you invest in. You may have a business. Your business, as long as there's positive cash flow on your business or your holdings, those are assets. Those fall under the asset class, not the liability class. Yes, with a lot of your assets, there is still some liability, but it wouldn't be considered a liability if it produces income in excess of the cost involved with with that particular asset. So that's the basics on assets versus liabilities. And what I want to dive into more details is on the importance of having more assets and less liabilities. So, over the years, being involved in the business, being associated with many other business owners, many other professionals, many other people in general, I see many people that come out of the gate, get out of school, start their business, whatever it is, go from making X to making X, and their income increases, but then the shiny object syndrome kicks in. Making more money, I got to buy a nicer car. My business is growing, I got to buy a bigger house. I'm out of college now, I have a career, I got to buy this house, I got to buy this car, I need this watch, I need, whatever the case may be. I got to have this Gucci belt, or these fancy shoes, or anything. Well, the problem becomes, or the issue becomes, is before you before you realize it, you're doing better. You're making, 3 times more than you were last year, in the previous years. You're making 5 times more. You're making 10 times more. But if your income is increasing, but your liabilities are also increasing with that, at the end of the day, you're truly no further ahead. For me personally, my goal is to buy more assets, create more value, create more cash flow, but also in the same note, pay the liabilities down, reduce the liabilities, keep things paid down, paid off, and not have that constant chase going. Me, like anyone else, or like a lot of other people, I did get caught up in that early on, where you start making some money, you buy a house, you buy a car, whatever. Fortunately, for me, I monitored that. I never got too carried away. And then, many years ago, I realized that, I do not, want to get caught up in that, where it's like constantly chasing, trying to do better, trying to outdo other people. That's not for me. I mean, my goal, my end goal is to create a big portfolio, a big company, create a lot of value, and have a lot of holdings there, but also live well within my means, keep my assets up and keep my liabilities down. So for me, that's my personal goal. That's not for everybody. A lot of people like fancy stuff, and so be it. That's for you. The thing that really caught my attention several years ago was understanding and learning the difference of being rich versus being wealthy. So being rich is, to me, and this is my opinion, to be rich is to have a lot of money, to have a lot of stuff, to have a lot of a lot of fancy stuff. But to be wealthy is to have a lot of assets, and you can have a lot of assets. You can make a lot of money. You can create something big without having to feel that need to live that, rich lifestyle, where you're going out to 5-star dinners every night, or, you're going to the fancy vacations, every other week. And don't get me wrong, I like doing nice things, but, try to keep it under wraps on what we're doing versus what we have. So I think Robert Kiyosaki said this, and it really hit home when I read it. It's rich is measured in dollars and wealth is measured in time. And what that means to me is, if you have $1 million, to some people, $1 million would be life-changing, or would be a ton of money, or would be, a lifetime worth of money. And for many people, it could be. But, if you're rich and you have $1 million, but your burn rate or your monthly expenses, is $100,000 a month, you got 10 months with that $1 million. I mean, that's reality. So, wealth is measured in time, and wealth is how much time do you have versus the amount of money you have. And if you have $1 million and your monthly expenses are $10,000 or $20,000 a month, you're going to get a whole lot more time, than if your expenses are $100,000, $50,000 or $100,000 a month. It's just basic math. So, the goal, to go back to the beginning, the goal on assets versus liabilities is to create the assets, create the cash flow, create the residuals, regardless of, what business you're in. If you're in real estate, we can create the cash flow. If you're in a different business, if you're in insurance sales, or, any other type of sales that creates residual income, the goal should be to increase that cash flow, or increase that residual income, but on the same hand, keep the liabilities, the monthly expenses down low. And that's how you create wealth. That's how you create time. It's like, how much time do I have on how long can I live versus what I create off of what I've created over time. So, if you look at it that from that standpoint, again, me personally, my goal is to continue to create the portfolios, create the cash flows, create the equities, but keep my expenses down low. When we have some big plays, we get some sales, or we get some equity plays or something like that. We have a good year, good month, good quarter. I don't go out and buy a new Ferrari. I don't go on, these overseas vacations or anything like that. Me personally, I prefer to take that chunk and let's buy some more. Let's put it somewhere. Let's buy some more assets. Let's build the portfolio. Let's build that cash flow and create more time, create more wealth, and long-term plays, in the long term, that will go much further for you on a personal level, on a financial level, creating that long-term wealth than, buying a new car, or buying creating more liabilities for yourself. Because, I learned this, as I had said, I'm always, networking with people, I have several people in my life that I consider, mentors of mine. And I have a lot of friends in the business, a lot of people that I network with, and, prime example of, assets versus liability, rich versus wealthy is, when we went into this, year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, we went into the shutdown and the restrictions with COVID. It wasn't quite 2 years, but it was a while ago. So everybody's well aware the entire world shut down. Nobody knew what was going on, what was going to happen, or anything like that. And I'm through that period, I mean, everybody had a lot of time. Everybody had a lot of free time because there wasn't much to do. I mean, even construction was shut down for 60 days. And, we had several projects under construction, and, my daily routine at the time would be, I'd be in the office for a little while, and then I might go out, I might check on some jobs, I might visit some job sites. Well, there's no job sites to visit because nothing's happening. So I spent more time, in front of the computer, and on the phone and talking to people. And, several of the people that I talked to, were, folks that, assets are up, liabilities are down. And, through that shutdown, there was little to no concern on their end. It's like, this is what it is, man. I'm, my one very good friend and mentor, he spent most days in the backyard, or, when able, on the golf course with his daughter. And they were just doing their thing. He had very little concerns. He's like, when it opens back up, it opens back up, it is what it is. And, when things started to open back up, he didn't have many issues. Why? Because assets were up, liabilities were down. He didn't have a huge monthly nut. He didn't have a lot of expenses, but he did have a substantial amount of income and a substantial amount of reserves. So it was a non-issue. Another friend of mine, spent a month up at his lake house. He spent time with his boys, 13, 15 years old, something like that at the time. They were able to spend a month together, as a family. And, in talking with him, same thing. It's kind of like, it is what it is. When we come back, we come back. And, on the flip side, there were many people, out there that, it's like, what are we going to do here? What are we supposed to do? And then when things started to open back up, it was a total crap show. I mean, trying to get caught back up, get things going again, keep the machine going, because, the assets, the cash flow, the income might be up, but the liabilities are pretty close, to where the income is. So it's a constant machine that you got to feed. So, it goes back to, wealth management, finances, money management. Just because if you're making $500,000 a year, or $1 million a year, or $2 million a year, may seem like a lot of money, but if you're spending that amount of money, get you no further ahead. I mean, sure, you got some nice things. You got some, you might have some cool cars or some, big houses or, vacation homes or things like that. But at the end of the day, if you got to constantly feed that machine, you got to constantly be doing more projects or growing your business or, creating more income, taking on more opportunities to feed the machine. Is it really worth it? I mean, you gotta think about that. And it comes down to, your personal goals. It's like, where do you want to be? Like, what's your goals? And, you gotta write your goals down. You gotta have a plan, a plan to execute those goals. And, maybe some people, their goals are to have, a giant house and, garages full of cars and vacation homes and, everything, the jewelry and, the big, lifestyle that goes along with that. Maybe that is your goal. And maybe that's, the lifestyle you want to lead. For me personally, it's not. My goal again is to continue to build the asset column, buy more assets, create more cash flow, create more equity, create more value in the business. But also on the flip side, keep the liabilities low. And don't get me wrong, again, I like nice things, I like nice cars, I like living in a nice home, but I try to keep that within reason. Could we drive much nicer cars and have more cars in the driveway? Could we live in a much bigger home, with a ton of, of course we could, but then I really got to work for it. I gotta continue to feed that machine, continue to pay for those liabilities. And to me, it's a balance. It's constantly a balance. It's like, we want to continue to grow here. We want to have nice things here, but we want to make sure that there's a big spread in between the two. So, again, understanding the difference between assets and liabilities and your personal goals and what you want to do with your life and your family's life and your future family's life. Generational wealth is a big thing. We'll talk about that in a future episode. But do you want to hustle hard? Do you want to work? Do you want to have all this nice stuff right now? Or do you want to work, create the assets, create the value, create the portfolio, and have something that you can leave for, future generations? That's really, it's a personal opinion. You now know my personal opinion. You may totally disagree with that, and you're welcome to do so. I have no issues with that. But again, just diving into those details, just, when you're doing things, think assets, think liabilities. If you're taking on another liability, think about it. Like, just sit down and think, like, do I need this? Is this going to make my life better? Is this going to change my life? Or is it going to be a headache? Is it going to cost me more money? Is it going to be aggravation? And do I want that aggravation? So that's just, in a nutshell, that's the difference between assets and liabilities. Again, just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. Thank you for tuning in. That's episode 5 of the Avid Investor Podcast with me, your host, Josh Adamek.